he hadn't eaten in 3 days. Kibo, 34 years old, the oldest gorilla at the sanctuary, 430 pounds of muscle and silence, sat in the corner of his enclosure and stared at the wall. The food was there. It had been there every morning. He didn't touch it. The veterinary team had a word for what they were seeing. Grief. And grief in a gorilla can be fatal. Sarah had worked with Kibo for 12 years. She knew his sounds, his moods, the particular way he tilted his head when something interested him. She had watched him lose everything. And now she had one last idea. A small thing, a desperate thing. Something she wasn't even sure would work. But she had made him a promise, and she intended to keep it. But before we continue, subscribe so you don't miss another touching story like this one, and write in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Thanks. Sweetwater Gorilla Sanctuary. 8 months earlier, Maya had died on a Tuesday morning in March. Quietly, in her sleep, the way the very old sometimes go, without warning, without struggle, as if they had simply decided it was time. She was 31 years old. She had lived at the sanctuary for 26 of those years, and for 22 of them, she had never spent a single night apart from Kibo. Sarah had been the one to find her. She had stood in the doorway of the enclosure for a long moment before she could make herself move, before she could make herself understand what she was seeing. Then she had called the veterinary team, and then she had watched. Kibo had been awake when they arrived. He was sitting beside Maya, one hand resting on her back, the way he had rested it every night for 22 years when she slept beside him. He didn't move when the team came in, didn't make a sound, just sat. The team worked quietly, carefully, with the particular respect that comes from knowing they are in the presence of something they cannot fully understand. Kibo watched them. When they finally, gently began to move Maya's body, he made a sound, low, brief. A sound Sarah had never heard from him before and would spend years trying to describe to people who hadn't been there. Then he was quiet again. He sat in the corner where Maya had slept and didn't move for the rest of the day. That evening, Sarah stayed late. She sat outside his enclosure in the fading light and looked at him, 34 years old, massive, utterly still, and felt the particular helplessness of someone who loves something they cannot reach. "I won't let you disappear too," she said quietly. "I promise." Kibo didn't look at her, but she said it anyway, 22 years. Kibo and Maya had arrived at the sanctuary within months of each other, both rescued as infants from the illegal wildlife trade. They had grown up together, learned together, built the particular, intricate language of two animals who have spent so long in each other's presence that they no longer need words. They had also lost together. 11 years ago, Maya had given birth. The infant hadn't survived. Sarah had been there for that too, had watched Maya hold the tiny still body for hours, the same way Kibo would one day hold her, had watched her slowly, painfully understand. In the weeks after, Maya had changed. She became quieter, more watchful. She stopped playing the way she used to, stopped the small daily rituals that had defined her personality for years. And then one day, a child visiting the sanctuary had pressed a small stuffed animal against the glass. A soft brown bear, worn and loved, and somehow it had ended up inside the enclosure. Maya had carried it everywhere after that. For 11 years. It had become so much a part of her daily life that the staff stopped noticing it. It was just part of Maya, tucked under her arm when she slept, carried carefully when she moved, checked on, throughout the day, with the particular attention of someone making sure something precious was still there. Kibo had never touched it, but he had always known where it was. After Maya died, the bear had stayed in the veterinary room. Nobody knew what to do with it. It felt wrong to throw it away. It felt wrong to leave it in the enclosure. So it sat on a shelf in the vet room, small and worn and out of place, while Kibo sat in his corner and stopped eating. The first day, the staff weren't worried. The second day, Dr. Osei, the sanctuary's lead veterinarian, 15 years of primate care, ordered additional monitoring. The third day, he called Sarah into his office. "He needs to eat," he said. "If this continues another 48 hours, we're looking at intervention. Force feeding, sedation." He looked at her. It carries real risk at his age. 48 hours. Sarah looked at her hands. "Is there anything at all, you can think of that might reach him?" Sarah sat quietly for a moment. She thought about Maya, about the bear, about 11 years of watching Maya carry it through every day like it was the most important thing in the world, about Kaibo, who had never touched it, but had always known where it was. "Yes," she said quietly. "Maybe." The next morning, 7:14 a.m., 36 hours remaining. Sarah stood outside Kibo's enclosure with the bear in her hands. It was smaller than she remembered, softer. The fur worn smooth in the places Maya had held it most. It still smelled faintly of her, that particular warmth that Sarah had spent 12 years learning to recognize without thinking about it. Kibo was in his corner. He didn't look up when she approached. She had thought about this moment all night, had rehearsed what she would do, how she would do it, had told herself it would work. Standing here now, looking at him, 34 years old, massive, utterly still. She wasn't sure of anything. She opened the enclosure door slowly. Kibo didn't move. She walked to the center of the enclosure and placed the bear on the ground, stepped back, and waited. Kibo didn't look at it. Didn't look at her, didn't move at all. 5 minutes, 10. The bear sat in the center of the enclosure, small and worn and impossibly out of place. Kibo sat in his corner and looked at nothing. 20 minutes. Sarah felt something collapse quietly inside her. She thought about the promise she had made, about all the ways love tries to reach something that has closed itself off from the world. She picked up the bear, walked back to the door, stopped with her hand on the frame. She put the bear back down, just inside the door, within reach if he ever decided to move. Then she left. She didn't know if it was enough. She only knew she had nothing else to give. She told herself she would try again tomorrow, that he needed time, that grief didn't move on anyone's schedule, human or gorilla. She told herself a lot of things on the walk back to the staff room. She didn't believe any of them. The next morning, 6:52 a.m., 12 hours remaining. Dr. Osei found Sarah before she had taken off her jacket. "We're out of time," he said quietly. "If he doesn't eat this morning, we start intervention this afternoon." Sarah looked at him. Then she turned and walked to the monitoring room without a word. She sat down in front of the overnight footage, pressed play. 2:47 a.m. Kibo moved. He stood up slowly, the careful, deliberate movement of a large animal that has been still for too long, and walked to the enclosure door. He stood over the bear for a long moment, completely still. Then he lowered himself to the ground and picked it up. He held it the way Maya had held it, under his arm, against his chest, with the particular careful grip of something that has learned through long practice exactly how much pressure is too much. He sat with it a long time. Then he stood up and walked to the corner of the enclosure where Maya had always slept. He set the bear down, then he adjusted it. One careful movement, tilting it slightly to the left. Then another, straightening the worn ear that always folded over. The same adjustments Maya had made every night for 11 years. He remembered. He knew exactly how she had placed it. He sat back and looked at it. For a long moment he didn't move. Just looked. The way you look at something when you're checking that it is right. when you're checking that nothing important has been lost, when you're looking for someone who isn't there anymore and finding instead the shape of where they used to be. Then something in him seemed to settle. He lay down beside it. His body curved around the bear the way it had curved around Maya for 22 years, closed his eyes, and for the first time in 3 days his breathing slowed into sleep. Sarah sat staring at the frozen frame for a long time. Her coffee went cold beside her. She didn't notice. She thought about the promise she had made 8 months ago in the fading light outside his enclosure. I won't let you disappear too. He hadn't. That morning, Kaibo ate. Not much, but enough. Dr. Ose watched without speaking for a long time. He just needed something of hers, he finally said. Sarah shook her head slowly. He needed to know she hadn't completely disappeared, she said, that something she loved was still here. She watched Kaibo move slowly around the enclosure, the bear tucked carefully under his arm. He's taking care of it, she said quietly, the way she did. Every morning after that, Kibo carried the bear to Maya's corner. He placed it there with the same careful deliberateness, always the same spot, always the same position, always the same 2 adjustments. Then he sat beside it for a while before starting his day. The staff watched without interfering. Some of them started arriving, early just to see it. None of them talked about it much. There wasn't much to say. 4 months later, a young gorilla arrived at the sanctuary. Kibo had been alone long enough. 11 months old. Found alone in the forest after his mother was killed by poachers. Frightened of everything. Pressing himself into corners the way young, traumatized animals do. Arms around his own ribs, head down, waiting for something to strike. The staff named him Tatu. The Swahili word for 3, the number of days he had survived alone before they found him. Protocol required separation from the adult gorillas while he adjusted, but Kibo's enclosure shared a mesh wall with the quarantine area. The first time Tatu saw Kibo, he froze. Kibo looked at him for a long moment. Then he walked slowly to the mesh wall and sat down. He didn't make a sound, didn't reach through the wire, didn't do anything except sit, large and still and present, on the other side of the mesh. Tatu pressed, himself against the far wall of the quarantine area, arms tight around his own ribs. Head down, Kibo waited. 5 minutes. 10. He didn't move, didn't make a sound, didn't do anything that could be interpreted as pressure or demand. Just sat. The way Sarah had sat outside his enclosure in the fading light 8 months ago. Just present, just there, just saying, I am not leaving. You are not alone. 15 minutes. Tatu lifted his head, looked at Kibo, looked away, looked back. 20 minutes. He took 1 small step forward, then stopped. Kibo didn't move. Another step, then another. He pressed himself against the mesh on his side. Slowly, Kibo pressed his hand flat against the wire on his. They sat like that for a long time, neither of them making a sound. 3 days later, Sarah made a decision. She picked up the bear from Maya's corner, walked to the mesh wall between the 2 enclosures, and placed it on Tatu's side. She didn't know why exactly. It felt right in a way she couldn't fully explain. Kibo watched her do it. He didn't try to take it back. He just watched Tatu approach the bear slowly, sniff it, pick it up with uncertain hands, and hold it the way Maya had held it, the way Kibo had held it. Behind the glass, one of the younger staff members turned away for a moment. Kibo sat at the mesh wall for a long time after that. Sarah stood beside him. Dr. Ose appeared quietly beside her. He didn't just grieve her, he said softly. He understood that love doesn't belong to one person. It belongs to whoever needs it most. Sarah couldn't speak for a moment. She thought about the promise she had made 8 months ago in the fading light. I won't let you disappear too, He hadn't disappeared. He had done something she hadn't expected. He had passed it on. 2 months later, they were introduced properly. The first sessions were cautious, careful. The third session, Tatu walked directly to Kibo and climbed into his lap. Kibo sat completely still. Then, slowly, he put one arm around him. For just a moment, his eyes moved to Maya's corner, then back to Tatu. The bear was tucked under Tatu's arm. Sarah watched from outside the enclosure, her hand over her mouth. Beside her, Dr. Osi cleared his throat. Maya would have liked this, he said quietly. Sarah couldn't speak for a moment. Yes, she finally said, she would have. Kibo still visits Maya's corner every morning. He sits there for a while. Then he goes to find Tatu. And the day begins. Some loves are too large to disappear. They live in the things we leave behind, in the ones who carry them forward. Did this story touch your heart? And do you believe animals can love and grieve just like we do? Write yes or no in the comments below, like this video, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.